This is chapter 11, SQL Server databases, and we'll split this up over a couple of classes. Um, in previous versions of Visual Studio, um, couldn't get this to work for most students, and I've not tried it since it went to 2019. So we might just go through the first part of it to see if it works. Um, Basic database terminology. A computer database is an electronic file. It contains an organized collection of related information. Relational databases can be related in different ways. A field is a single item of information about a person, place, or thing. And I know this is review for many, but it fits right in with this chapter. This is w3schools.com. I think one of the best, tutorial points I like pretty well too, but this I like a little bit better. But it's a fantastic place to go and learn about different technologies. A lot of them web-based, but not all of them. You see, there's tutorials about learning XML. There's good references for all these different ones. They provide exercises as you go along. So if you're wanting to get an introduction, so you know what Python is, you know what HTML is, you know what CSS is, you know what all those are, fantastic site. Specifically, we're going to take a look at this, Learn SQL. And there's try it yourself buttons there. Now a database consists of a bunch of tables. It's much more than that, but that's all we'll think of it for now. So a database can consist of customers, categories, employees, and so forth. Now, if I click the customers, this has 72 records in it. And it's kind of a way to store information. So when you order something off of Amazon, for example, it will create a record out there. For example, the orders table here. If you placed an order through Amazon, it would first ask you to create a customer account, which would give you a customer ID, so you'd have your own customer number. And they never store it by your name because your name can change. If you get married, get divorced, you just decide you want to be called David and no last name, then you can change that. That's why they'll give you a customer ID. We won't go into much of the details of the design of a database, but there's quite a bit to it. Making sure that things link up appropriately, that you're not having a bunch of redundant data in your tables, and so forth. For example, this order ID doesn't appear like it has much useful information, but we do have customer ID, and customer ID would link over to our customers table. I'll not load that new table. Let's see. If I look at my customers, for this particular one here, for this order, customer ID 90, customer ID number was Wilman Kayla. I'll probably look at the wrong column. Customer name, yeah, it is customer name. And this is their contact. So add links to that. Employee ID, maybe the person who placed the order, if I had to guess. It's a bogus database, but that's bizarre. I've been using this for for maybe about a year. I don't remember this information being out here. Their pick. Huh. Maybe it has, and I just didn't notice it. But that must be who placed the order. And then shipper ID. I assume this is who's going to ship the order. And that's under probably shippers. Number 3. Which would be federal shipping. So this shows you an example database. Now, part of developing a database application is for you to design it. And this we'll focus on here first is a relational database. But then we'll go to a non-relational database, go to NoSQL. Specifically, we'll look at Firebase. Table is a group of related records. That's when you come over here. If you look at the orders, this is related. They're all orders. This is all products. This is shippers. This is suppliers. You know, it's all some kind of common theme to the table. Primary key is a field that uniquely identifies each record. This helps to ensure that your data integrity. So if you mark something as a primary key and some other items with it too, you can specify that it doesn't duplicate. That's unique. Foreign key is a field that typically refers to a primary key in another table. Because maybe you need to go over to the shippers table, so you got a shipper ID. Table containing the foreign key is called the child table. Table containing the matching primary key is called the parent table. And this is an example, you know, where you got country code that links over to here in the United States. You might say, well, why don't you just store United States here? Well, what happens if the United States changes its name? It seems kind of out there, but countries do change their names. You know, they're talking about adding a couple more states to the United States if a certain party wins. DC, and I forget what else. But you know, you can't always assume things are going to remain as they are. So what you do is you have a location table over here, and so then if it ever changes, you just change it in one place, versus changing it in maybe 1,000 different records. Now, to show you the comparison between these, in SQL you have a bit that's in Visual Basics Boolean. Decimal in SQL is decimal here, float, double, nit, integer. Character, varchar is string. Now you'll find is that this is for an SQL Server database. Some of you are looking at this like, well, we've been looking at Oracle quite a bit this semester, and these don't look familiar. It'd be nice if they were consistent across the board. The idea of coming up with a relational database is that if you needed to move to a different database, it would transition smoothly. The same queries that I would use to query against this database would work on this one. Unfortunately, it's been they've kind of screwed it up. They haven't stuck with ANSI SQL, and they put their own twist to it. Because hey, if you're using SQL for your database, you should be using SQL Server database. That's Microsoft's view. For Oracle, you know, if you're doing SQL for your database, you should be using Oracle database. That's why they all kind of have their own flavor, because they think you shouldn't be using anything else in it, period. Now, I haven't tried this in 2019, so we'll go ahead and try it right here, actually. Typically, I ignore the SQL Server and I focus on Access database. But I'm going to try this part just to see if this works. And then we're going to switch over and we're going to look at how to query things, how to update, how to delete, because we're going to write a Visual Basic application that does all those. And we're going to do it against a relational database, probably Access unless this part works. And then we'll also create an application to update a non-SQL database. And that's the Firebase I was mentioning. Okay. Ignore that. Click on project, add new item. Okay. So I got one loaded here. And add new item. It's SQL Server, but I guess how to read. But this is 2017, so they change. Let's try to expand the installed node. It's already expanded. Expand the common items. That's already expanded. Click data. Click service-based database. In the middle column, add new item. Dialog box, change the name in the name box to My Courses. That's what they're talking about here. I'll leave it as database 1. And then click the add. Click the add. It says if a message box appears alerting you that some packages are missing, click the OK, click the Yes button, allow changes, click data sources for SQL Server support, then click the install. That's weird. 2019, they must have it set up differently. Okay. The template display the Solution Explorer window, which is what I'm showing here, and you see you got database1.mdf here. That's interesting. I've never been able to use this to ever have taught Visual Basic before. Students cannot access it. So maybe this is a change for the future with 2019. Okay. Right-click My Courses on MDF in the Solution Explorer window and click Open to. Okay. Open a Server Explorer window. So open. So that's left over from before. Let's see, expand My Courses. Okay, so you see how database1.mdf is here, and you got tables, you got views, stored procedures, functions, synonyms. I'm saying that right. I always have trouble with that word. Types, assemblies. We haven't created any tables yet. Now to add a table in a database, you right-click tables. By the way, is anybody doing this at the same time as me? Or are you able to do this on your version? I'll probably go back to. I'm going to show it following their steps here, but I'm going to go back and show the access. Not everybody has the setup for this type of database. So Access is a good one because a lot of people use Access directly, so you can kind of interface the two together. Okay, so right-click on here and say Add New Table. Got a little typo in their PowerPoint, I see. INT. I was wondering, it's just like knit. I think they meant for that to be INT. That's a bad typo. I should get a job. I should get a job with what is it, Cengage, and look for things like that. I shouldn't. I shouldn't poke fun. I misspell things all the time. Okay, where was I? Let's say add new table. Okay, pops up in designer surfaces. Finish loading. Change table in TSQL to courses. The key that appears next to ID and the name column indicates ID is the primary key. Appears in TSQL. Anyway, you see this here. You do the drop down. You could change the other options if you had it. We only got one. And it tells you information about it over here. Let's see. If I click here, I could give it a new name. Like if I was wanting a first name, you come down here to your drop down, and these are all the different data types which match nothing in Oracle. Same principle, but I shouldn't say they don't match it completely, but it's quite a bit different. In Oracle, you actually spell out integer. I don't think money exists in Oracle. So you got varchar. Backup your file encryption key. What in the world is a file encryption key? Guess I won't worry about that. Last name. Varchar. And then say age. Make that an integer. Allow nulls. That means you can leave it blank, and it's not actually equal to like a zero. Zero is where you put a zero in for an integer. It's where you didn't input it in. Now notice as I put it down here, it builds my SQL. Let's see. It's going to do my own thing, but okay. Let's click the update button. You see right up here in the upper left-hand corner is the update. And tells you the user action. We're going to create a table. And see this generate script. If I click generate script, this is the SQL. And again, looks quite a bit different than what we seen before. Being a guru in Oracle would not help you, in being a guru in SQL Server. Those of you who have taken PLSQL, it's kind of similar to that. You see, got an if here, begin, end, so forth. Rollback. In Oracle, we've talked about that. That's where if something goes wrong, it creating a sync point is how you can roll it back. Begin transaction is like where you start. Okay, we're going to start the transaction here. We'll post records, and then we'll do a commit. And once after you do the commit, you can roll back to like the previous commit. So a lot of different ones. And it builds all that for you. You see there's a little execute here. Surprised it gives an error. That's interesting. Maybe they don't got it working quite right. It works a lot better if you actually have SQL Server installed, like on a server. But okay. Anyway, update. Let's see, update database. No error that time. Anyway, update database, close the data tools operation window. And it shows you no issues found. I don't know why it came up with an error on the other one. Okay. Looks like no errors when doing it that way. So I wonder, refresh. There's refresh. Okay. And then we see our tables. Now that's correct. That's adding a table. In just ANSI SQL. See if I can remember the syntax of this. Create table, test. Varchar 250. I'm not even close. No, I did. Of course, I don't get any records in it. Insert into and name values David. So now David's test. Where's it at? How's that? So you can create tables with interfaces like that, and Oracle has a similarly user-friendly one. You can also create it with just type in SQL. Now, whether this is robust enough to allow you to do that, I don't know. We'll see. SQL file. Create table name, varchar. I don't think they support varchar 2, so let's try varchar 50. And run that. did I point it to local? Choose local. There we go. Now let's refresh this. Says it can be completed successfully. Maybe I have to commit. Commit is where you save your changes. Try it again. Already an object named David's test. Why aren't you showing it? Well, I don't see it there. If it is, probably better to use the interface. Okay, that's adding a table to a database. Okay, add records, expand the tables node in the Server Explorer, and expand the courses node. Course node is not pure. Click refresh, right click on that, and then show table data. Okay. That might be a bad sign. There, I came back. Show table data. Okay, so then you just type in your information. Let me put 3 in there. Notice something here. It says violation of primary key constraint. When we set the ID as our primary key, that way you can't give her 2 people the same social security number, for example. The 2 people the same customer ID. So then that has to be different. Now you can have everything else the same. Frank Hayes 58. It doesn't care. But by making it a primary key, then that sets it up in that manner. Okay. So you got our properties over here. Really not much over there besides just that. These got your different properties on this. You can close these, of course, to go back to whatever. Let's see if I guess. Okay. Now, if you double click it, it brings this design up here. So if you want to change something, then you can. Now, if you right click on something to say set primary key, See how you can change it? So if you wanted to go off first name. So now, violation of primary key. Did I not save it? Guess I didn't save it. You should have updated. Okay. So click update. Update database. Error occurred while a batch was being executed. Now the error could be because I have some violations in my data. Okay, let's go back. Now let me try it. Okay, assuming this is the newest one. Looks like it worked there. Okay, so if I come back to here, this row of success had a problem intending to retrieve the data back after the business displayed data. Read only. Fix the problem, refresh this display. Okay, so now it allows us to put 3 there. But I expect if I try to change this to Frank, see, it violates that. So again, you have to decide what your key is. First name would not be a good one. If you design your table wrong, then it causes issues. I'm surprised it isn't more robust at allowing this. But when I change this to primary key, like that, and click my update, and update database, the fact that it doesn't appear to change it, that I get an error here, that it failed. Let's see if that's a true statement. Yeah, see, it didn't just save it. This would imply if you have your database screwed up initially, they put a bunch of records in there wrong, and you realize after the fact that you have to go fix those errors prior to making your change it should be, which points out the importance of designing it correctly up front. Okay. Add records. Configuration wizard. Okay. I want to show how to query your data because pretty soon we're going to take a look at binding. It's where you have components you drop on your form and you bind it to a data source. And we're going to see this not just in this one, but in the Microsoft Access also. Now, I've never done Firebase in Visual Basic, and I want to do that too. That was one of my goals I set for myself in this for this semester, because we're going more and more to cloud databases, and so I want you to have some exposure to that. It's not a hard concept to bind something to your form. I probably should have started a new one first, but oh well. Have it up and running. Doesn't look like I do. But with your different components you can drop on there. Let's see, data grid view, data set, and so forth. This is where you make a connection between your data source you just added and your form there. We're going to see how to bind a text box to it, how to combine a lot of different items to it. How this is all done is in the data section here. I was having trouble finding it in all, so I like this because it helps connect all the different items. And to me, they've made it overly complex. Binding source and capitalized data source for form provides navigation, filtering, sorting, and updating. Binding navigator provides a user interface for navigation and manipulation of data bound to the control, so forth. Data set represents an in-memory cache of data. Yeah. Now, when you drop these on here, you won't necessarily see anything. It puts it down here at the bottom. It's over here where you see some of the different items you can set. So you can choose a data source, choose a data member, all those different items there. Binding navigator, that puts that across the top there. We're going to see that's going to allow us to traverse through our data. If we had 5 records, it allows us to go through each one. It's got its own properties. And some of this, when you drop it on, it'll connect them all together. Some of it you have to link yourself. That's what you're talking about here, where you got your records here from your table, and then you got your binding it where it's going record by record. Now, there was an interesting bug or I shouldn't say it's a bug, it's a feature. But by default, it doesn't actually save when you like insert a record here. It doesn't actually allow you to insert records and so forth until you create the executable. And the reason why is they want you to do testing as much as you want here without screwing up your real database. Now, we created a dummy database over here. We created this dummy one here and put some dummy records in and so forth. But your data connection does not have to be like a brand new table you create here. It can be one that you use in a production sense. You see there's a add connection here. And you can change it to different data sources. This is what I'm used to working with is Microsoft Access. If you do a change, I could point it to an Oracle database. Even though they don't want you to use Oracle, they want you to use SQL Server. They recognize a huge amount of the world uses Oracle, so they provide the connections to it, or allow Oracle to provide it. I don't know if I get this point to my personal server or not. I probably have to know my server name. I don't know my screen resolution right, so I wouldn't be able to see my server name, I don't think. Okay. Oh, well, it's taking too long. But it can connect to a database out there. So if you have an Oracle database in production, it can connect to that. Also in connections here, they add connections. Um, you see how there's an others option. So again, they try to make it so you can connect to whatever kind of database you want in theory. Um, okay, so back to here. I want to talk about how to query data because I'm going to have you for two parts. I want you to go through and we're going to see if you can actually create um, on your setup SQL Server table. So I'll have you create two tables over here. Um, and then also, I want you to create some queries over here. So let's talk about how to do queries. When you do a select star from the table name, from my customers, the star is a wildcard. It brings back all of your columns, so all of them right there, and it brings back all the records. If I just want to show a couple of columns, customer name, contact name, then it brings back just those. By the way, when I worked as a computer programmer for 13 years, databases encompassed probably 75, 80% of what I did. I'm guessing the percent, but it was a very high amount. Everything I did was through databases. Um, I wrote a system for the production floor to track their work orders and purchase orders, and so forth, and called it Midas. I guess I wasn't too full of myself. I thought it was so leading edge and so forth. That's what I joked that Midas had the gold touch. Everything it touched turned gold. Um, it actually stood for something. Manufacturing. Oh boy, it's been too long. Integrated data analysis system or something like that. Um, and yeah, so but it was all database. They scanned it, I stored it in a database. They wanted to run reports, I pulled it out of a database. So, you know, huge amount. If you're going to go into computer science, is working with databases. Even if you're going into, you want to configure servers, that's stored off in databases. Um, Data comes back returned in different formats, and you got to know how to parse apart data, and usually you parse it apart so you can then like store it maybe in another database. Database can be a flat file. That's a very primitive database. It can be in relational, can be NoSQL. You can store it into an XML for a type of database. Um, so yeah, databases, storage of data revolves around all of your programming. Um, there isn't many times. There are a few applications, like if you go into Mathway, um, all the programming behind there. Mathway. This is probably a lot more heavy on the programming part, except they want you to upgrade. And from here, if you upgrade, it stores it into a database. And I don't know what it would store in database, but again, database is a integral part of that. Okay. Anyway, that prints this off. The whole reason I was talking so much about databases is even if you don't take any SQL classes at Cali, um, come out here and learn yourself. If you go into a job interview and you're going into a programming position and they say, well, how's your SQL skills? And if you say, well, what's SQL stand for? They're not going to be impressed. And considering it's such a heavy amount of a programming job, you should know about databases. Like I say, you don't have to take Cali's classes. If you can learn on your own, go out there. You got Microsoft Access. Microsoft Access has all this built in. It has SQL behind it. Even if you haven't installed Access, if you go into the email, you'll have an option there to install Access. Okay, anyway. Okay, so I printed those two. Now, if I wanted to print just, let me do a star on customers again. If I want to print information just from people from France, then I can do a where country is equal to France. And then it pulls back everything that's based upon France. Notice the use of the single quotes here. That's kind of standard. We'll see that even over here in SQL Server. None of them use, I shouldn't say none of them do. But single quotes is kind of the standard for strings. If I wanted to order something, order, it's already ordered by customer ID, order by city. Then it'll sort it by city. You can sort by city, and then within city, you can sort by postal code. Probably doesn't make any sense. This is probably already sorted by postal code. It is, so we wouldn't see a change. Let me get a word of the where. Select star from customers, order by city. Let's say you got a request. You want to program this into a Visual Basic program where somebody wants to bring back the data and ordered by city. And beyond that, they want it then ordered by, they want it ordered by this contact name. Then you can do a comma, contact name. And now, let's see, for that one I was looking at, Buenos Aires, it put Sergio before Yvonne. It would put Isabel before Lino, and so forth. Now, probably you're not going to do a lot of, I don't think I ever created a table from scratch using SQL at IFR. I always used the interface they had for creating a table, just like you saw over in the SQL Server. Use that to create the table. It just makes it so much easier to use the interface that's given for that. But you do selects all the time. You do deletes. You do updates. Let's say I want to delete this record here for customer ID 65. Now that's how you do selects. Actually, select star from customers where customer ID, so I can spell, customer ID is equal to 65. Now I'm guessing it's a integer or a number, might be a string. Okay, returns that. It's always a good idea before you fire off any delete that you do a select. I've screwed these up before where you do a delete and you actually deleted the entire table. That's never a good feeling. And then change the select star to delete from. And it now deleted that one record. So that's how you will delete. Now part of this is built in with the interface. For example, here, if I use their navigation, you see how that little X is where it deletes a record. So if you go with a standard interface, you don't have to worry about programming that yourself. You don't even really have to worry much about SQL in that regard. They do make it kind of pretty dummy proof, but usually your customers want a little bit more exciting SQL than that. So you have to do some of that SQL behind the scenes. The plus is an insert. So that little golden plus there, that's standard for an insert. The little diskette here, that's a save. That's like committing your records. Okay, so that's how you do a delete. Now to insert, go to insert customers. Boy, I was looking right at it. Okay, so we got this. You do an insert into customers, and then you put a beginning parentheses, and you put the names of the columns that you want to insert. So if I want to insert customer ID and customer name, contact name, and by the way, you can come out here and play with this. From what I understand, it creates your own little sandbox based upon your. I don't know how it works, to be honest. But I had a student tell me they couldn't see all of the crap I was putting out there. Because I was wondering, am I putting this out here so the whole world can see it? And they said they couldn't see it. Somehow I think it creates your own little sandbox so you can play. Now, there's a restored database here so that you can put it back the way it was. Now, the Oracle has something similar to this, but theirs is more geared toward Oracle. I was playing with it yesterday when they canceled the college classes. I was playing with a live SQL at home because I didn't have all my hardware and equipment at home. But anyway, you put customer names or the column names there, and then you put values, and then customer ID. How many records? There's 71 records, so 75 is probably not used. Customer name, David Hayes. Oops, customer name, Hayes Enterprises. And David Hayes, the contact name. And I'm going to copy that. Run SQL. Customer ID. That's interesting. Let's try 100. Oops. That's why you. That's why you want to know something about your data, so you know what to put in there. There, 175. That wasn't used. Remember the primary key that we did over in the Microsoft SQL Server. Obviously, customer ID is a primary key. If I try to run it again and give me that same error message, do a constraint failure. So change to 176. Now, if I select on customers, you see down here at the bottom, I got my Hayes Enterprises, and I didn't put these in, so those are null. To update, well, first I want to do a selects where contact name equals to David Hayes. Now, if I did an update based upon this, it would update both these records, which might be okay. So I change this. Always a good idea doing a select before you do your update, so you know how many you're gonna change. So update customers, set city equal to Wellington. Now it affected that. Now consider that versus, I'm about ready to reset this anyway. I've really messed up this data. Update customers, set city equal to Wellington. Let's say I didn't do a select first, thinking, okay, I'm feel comfortable enough with SQL, I can go ahead and do this, and you run that, and that's the sinking feeling I'm talking about. You expected to update 2 records, you just updated 73 records, and then you think, oh no, I couldn't have screwed it up. Please don't me have screwed it up. Sign from customers. And all of a sudden you see everybody has the same city now. And so you just screwed up your entire table. Now some of these allow have a rollback feature. That's what all that scripting was for over in SQL Server. You saw the rollback and commit and so forth. Of course, that's its own setup. But you could write your own script where you did a rollback and you did a commit. This class isn't about learning how to be a genius at SQL Server. So we're just focusing on the very basics here because that's what we're going to do in Visual Basic. We're going to update a table. We'll delete records from a table. We'll insert records into a table and so forth. Okay, so now this first one's kind of iffy. I'm going to put this all into one project. So if you can't do part of it, just indicate that. But over in the SQL Server, create 2 tables. I'm just excited that we can do SQL Server now with 2019. So I want you to create 2 tables, your choice. Think about what you'd want to keep track of. If you have a movie collection, think about what information would be important for you to keep track of for your movie collection. Movie name, producer, director, year, so forth. Think about the different data types that you might want. Integer, or do you want a varchar type of deal? So create 2 tables in there, and then over at W3 Schools, I want you not the table I created or the SQL I did, but I want you to create 2 select statements. That's where we pull the data. I want you to create 2 insert statements to insert data into some kind of table. Your choice. I want you to do 2 update statements. Again, your choice, just don't do the same thing I did. And 2 delete statements. This is a completely safe area here. So if you do screw it up, no big deal. You click Restore Database, and it'll put it exactly back to where it was. That's why I say I love this site. I don't think there's any place that gives you that. Well, LiveSQL or .oracle.com does too, but oh well. So that's the assignment for this week. Next week, we're going to take data sources and we're going to bind it, and we're going to actually create a database application. Questions on what I'm looking for? Okay, so we'll